All right, we're doing it back to front. We're actually doing our introduction, not in post.
It makes it a bit easier for me to edit.
This episode was great. It was such a good ep, especially about 45 minutes in when Delby left. All the puns stopped and the boys could talk serious. So that was pretty awesome. We're joined by Corey White today, but before we say hello to Corey, the studio tenancy is potentially going to be in jeopardy. So Corey White's idea is to put the call out to any listeners that might have some space available for us to move our Hard Yarns podcast studio.
That would be lovely.
So somewhere around Osborne Park or the city would be ideal. So if that's you and you've got some space, even if you're already renting somewhere and there's some dead space.
Like an office.
Yeah.
Because we just need this little area here. So like a 4x4
or 5x5.
That'd be good.
Yeah. So hit us up at the Hard Yarns podcast.
Potentially.
Yeah. But you might have something better.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it'd be sick. But this episode is brought to you by Raunchy. It's actually good. It does taste good.
Yeah,
it's a good beer.
Shout out to them for Up and Joke. They're going to give us a few door girls and a bunch of beer to give away. So,
and speaking of Up and Joke, Corey, you had a lovely little role this morning to play, but I am fucked. Yeah, I'm exhausted. So if I sound exhausted during this episode,
I'm fucking scarred from what I saw.
I think I actually did a hammy, so that's going to be interesting. Anyway, it's next Saturday. Not many tickets left, so if you want to come and watch us be silly buggers,
yeah, we'll talk about it. Well,
it's in the bio.
We actually talk about it in the pod. What else do we talk about, Corey?
Me and my triumph at the Melbourne Comedy Festival and vanquishing the cultural enemies that are ruining the art form in this country and the renaissance that's coming.
Fucking, I couldn't have framed it better myself.
And I'm just assuming that's what we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
Perfect.
It.
All right, cool.
Let's get hard.
Welcome to Hard Yarns Podcast.
I am fucking fat.
Anything Chris White says, please disregard it.
5D is actually a state of being. It's a unity consciousness.
That was Hard Yarns with me, Frankie Rose. So I'm going to throw it over to your co-host,
Daniel Delby.
And Cameron Brand.
I would do this and then I'd gong.
Free in attendance for the millions listening at home. Let's get hard.
Hey guys.
So I just want to make sure though that the sound is on, because I was in Melbourne and I had a call from dear friend James McCann and he said, do you know a good podcast I can do in Western Australia while I'm there? I said, absolutely, hit up the Hard Yarns boys. And he called me after and said that was one of the best podcasts I've ever done. And then I find out the fucking sound wasn't on.
Mate, it was it's a setup nightmare. So this the setup is good and it's a bit dodgy. Like we're having a few camera technicalities because we're having to chop and change a few things. So sometimes you might notice the screen might blink a bit and whatever. But
that's because we need some more sponsorship and YouTube subscribers.
Exactly right. The boys are doing it on a shoestring budget, and you need to put your hands in your shallow pockets.
And the issue we had that day was someone came in, used the computer, unplugged the roadcaster from the thing, and then didn't plug it back in. We just assumed it was on, and we recorded a whole episode.
And obviously that's why they're no longer sitting here.
It was Kyle Legacy was the guy that day, but he didn't know.
Fucking hell.
Fucking sack. But yeah, thanks so much for joining us. Before we get onto it, you'll notice I am wearing the Penrite. I am, and I think
Dave
you're
give you that hat.
Yeah, Dave did you actually.
Did
I am part of
it?
No, but I'm part of the Dave Reynolds fan club now. I'm fucking full on board. Yeah. And he and I know you sort of you follow him and you like his stuff. But I guess the service and the way he went above and beyond for me and my daughter on Saturday to just make us feel at home, got us on the grid, got us to sit in the pit crew, watch the race from down there. And I was worried Scotty was going to not really rate the noise. But she fucking loved it. And he was just treating us like one of his mates, and it was just fucking awesome. Just really good day, and it's actually got me right into supercars again. So
that's good, mate.
Big shout out to Dave. He came third on the day we were there as well. Got a podium, and poor Scotty got the old champagne shower. She was like, I need to change. Yeah, I was like, fuck. And the only bad part of the day, I'm not joking, 2.5 hours out of the car park. Didn't even move for 2.5 hours. Like, did not did
Super
not
slow.
crawl, did not nothing. Just
Why though? I don't get that.
The
So-
irony, you sit there watching cars going fast all day, and then
Yeah.
you fucking sat there stationary.
So unfortunately, because we were placed, he left us tickets at the accreditation centre. So I got there. I got a good time, got a good parking spot towards the exit. So like everything lined perfectly. And then I went to the front counter to get the tickets, and they're like, "Oh no, the accreditation centre's back down these roads. You're gonna have to go back to the go-kart and go in there and get it." And I was like, "Oh fuck!" So I had to go back, drive there, get it, and then as I got back, we were put all the way at the end, like the furthest point of literally the back of the car park. And so all of these people are trying to get out of this car park at the same time. So they're slowly creeping, but no one from behind can move forward because the people are letting other people in. So the last people to move out were us, and we were probably one of the last people to get out.
I hate lines. Well, I hate like standing in lines. I hate standing in line. It's literally I fucking cannot stand it.
It was so like you sort of knew it was going to be a long wait, but it wasn't even moving. It wasn't even crawling. It was so slow that you just went, oh, well, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Listen to the footy. Scotty had her iPad, and there was my phone had died. So there was no reception. I couldn't spot her some internet to watch her YouTube Kids and keep her entertained in the car. And and she watched The Grinch, which had been downloaded on Netflix.
So did you do a
twice.
live reenactment?
Twice, or almost twice the whole way through before we started moving.
That's how you know they don't understand the words. They're just watching.
Yeah. Well, she knows now because she calls me the Grinch. Yada, the Grinch.
Yeah, I messaged Freddie Blake. I said we had Dave Reynolds on, and
he
he's a big
loves him.
fan of yours.
Yeah.
He goes, mate, we DM each other like 16-year-old girls. I'm even switching favourite race team. It's pretty serious.
Yeah.
He messaged me after that app. Such a good dude.
Well, Dave said his favourite guests recently were Wolfie.
And Freddie
He just
Blake.
said- he didn't say Wolfie. He said that screaming bloke. And he said, and Freddie Blake. He was like, he's one of us. He's one of us. And I was like, one of us? And he's like, one of us.
One of us.
Know. And I was like, yeah, one of us. So, yeah. But
Speaking of Wolfie, he was very thankful. I spoke to him yesterday. You got him a few spots to save his Melbourne trip.
Yeah, so I ran a couple of shows in Melbourne, one of which was the showcase gig, and Wolfie was there for the last weekend. And I gave him the instructions. I want your most degenerate, debased, insane self on that stage.
Yeah.
And the man delivered.
Yeah.
He was in great
so
form.
just
and
himself.
Yeah.
unleashed him on some of the good burgers of Melbourne.
Did he say that you should put your dick in the bin? Or didn't he
No, but
Is he doing that as a...
Scoop his balls out.
yeah, no, he did do that bit.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Is he doing that as a bit now?
he's doing that as a
That's
bit.
so
And there was one set where he was killing, and then I think he went for the dick scooping bit. It's like, oh, I lost you there.
Yeah, you didn't like it.
I don't know.
But he won him back, and you know it's one of my favourite things to watch a comedian like the Wolf.
Yeah.
And it's like a tornado, and it goes between category 5 and category 1.
Yeah.
All within the space of 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of Melbourne, you're sporting a wonderful shiner there.
Yeah, it's
an
dissipated a little bit.
I won't say black eye, whatever you say these days.
Yeah, well, it was very purple.
A purple eye.
at its peak.
Mm.
But look, we'll save that story for the end because that was probably the crescendo.
The
Oh.
alphabet community would have been absolutely stoked to see that.
Yes, well, look, there was a lot of people who thought, fucking finally, Corey's got a punch in the head. And there was a few nights
I was one of them.
There's probably a few nights I deserved a punch in the head, to be honest.
Yeah,
But the
yeah.
night I got one, I didn't deserve it. So
Yeah, right.
that's life for you. But mate, on the back of the success of Adelaide, because I think last time I was on the pod, I said that we were talking about Dave Chappelle and the Fringe Festival and the fact that there was a cultural election taking place and that we were winning in a landslide.
Oh, it's
And we
definitely.
replicated it in Adelaide.
Yep.
And even bigger in Melbourne. So
you're seeing even in
huge shift,
even
And
in
you can-
Melbourne.
and you can
wow.
Melbourne especially, because Melbourne's kind of been the epicenter for this sort of waterboarding of an agenda, and forcing mediocrity and this neo-progressive ideology down everyone's throats via comedy.
Yeah.
And the Melbourne Comedy Festival probably had its most embarrassing year this year.
Wow. I did look through the Facebook the other day.
The Facebook? Fuck, this cunt turned 80.
No, the Facebook Melbourne page.
Oh my
Melbourne
God. I
page.
thought you were like...
No, not the Facebook. No, the Facebook Melbourne Comedy Festival page. And it is all, except I've seen 2 straight white Aussie blokes and the rest was lesbians.
And the straight white blokes do promote are the most...
safe.
The anodyne, right? They're safe. They're not going to offend anyone, and they're the pets of, I guess, Susan Proven.
And it's not that I think that like the lesbians or the trans comedians are poor. It's just that's all it was.
Yeah,
and
so there's no diversity from too much.
Yeah.
Well, from going down the PC.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh yeah, that's great. Yeah, she's a good comedian. He's a great comedian. Whatever. Whatever, but fucking give us some more, not just. It was almost oppressively it was overwhelming how much
people across the country are so wise to this, mate. And I've been calling this negative queering, and that when it comes to comedy, Australians aren't homophobic, but they're definitely homo-fatigued. Like I said last time, I'm unvaccinated, I'm a small minority of the population, but I'm not demanding we remake society in my own image, and I'm certainly not demanding that the festival market itself around our identity.
My uncle, for example, he's the most progressive. Oh, I fucking love. He's a hippie. He's all for everything's love of everyone. And even he's the same. We were watching it down there earlier in the year. We were watching replays, actually, I think, of last year's one. And he's like, they're fucking... Gala. Yeah, the gala. And he said, they're just throwing it in your face. It's too much.
Diabolical, the gala, too. I watched it, and it was just like, these people were bombing in a theatre. Like, how do you bomb in a theatre? Especially in circumstances where... I mean, this is the dark age of democracy, but the golden age of satire. I mean, there's so much fodder if you're a socio-political comedian.
Yeah.
But if you're a Melbourne comedian who says, my gender, race and sexuality is the most interesting thing about me and I'm a victim.
Yeah.
People have had enough. They want something with some substance, and most of the Melbourne comedians, the only substance they have is in a clip seal bag. So,
well, we won't.
not that I deride that, but it's not a personality.
It feels like we've rode the wave and we're fine. You said people are getting that homo fatigue. They're also getting that almost talking about it fatigue.
Yeah.
Us mentioning it, I'm over it talking. I feel like we've won. I feel like
there's nothing to win. It's
not win, but not won the battle. But won the. We've held on. We've held on, and it's starting to go back the other way again.
And that's created a currency in of itself, that authenticity and the courage to stand against the mob and the prevailing winds of the time. That's what art's for. To sail against the currents of your own time and let the chips fall how they may. And when they fall and people realise who was standing when it mattered, that generates a lot of goodwill and adds to your brand, I think. I hate this corporate, but adds to your brand. What a fucking wanker.
Well, I think the only thing I regret over the whole COVID stuff, for example, the jab, my stance, I'm obviously unvaccinated and I wasn't overly vocal about it. I was against the mandates, but I didn't say I'm proudly unvaccinated and I'm making a stand for people who want to do that. With a platform like this, I probably could have actually been more open about it. I was worried about losing my job and I had lied.
Allegedly.
No, I'd lied.
I lied to SBS. I mean, I was the same as you, Branch. I didn't tell SBS about, my status and, I was kind of keeping a low profile.
Yeah.
Because of, I was worried to get cut from that show. But once that was done, I did become a little bit unhinged. And I'm not sure if I was unhinged or I was having a sane reaction to an insane society. And I think the truth's somewhere in the middle because these things aren't black and white. There's a huge grey area in that. So I'm a very proud non-binary thinker in that regard. But
it was hard not to let it overwhelm you, and sometimes you would lose your composure. I would lose my composure and get angry at someone or something in a situation instead of just going, no, you're doing you. It's not up for you to try and convince anyone else. I'd get angry at some things and I'd melt down, and then I'd pull myself back a couple of weeks later and go, fuck, didn't need to talk like that, didn't need to express this opinion, and this is me. This is I'm just doing it, and I'll hopefully be vindicated in my thoughts. And in the end, my thoughts on, for example, and on the jab were just to wait, because I felt like I was in a safe place to be able to do it. There wasn't any evidence to just suggest I was going to stop giving it to someone else, so I was just going to wait. And if it was end up going to be, there was going to be some data that suggested this is going to save you and help others, I would have bought in.
I wonder if you guys just got lucky that you were right.
Potentially.
You know?
I've often thought about that.
You know, what if it ended up being what they were saying and you weren't lied to?
The only thing...
And you're fucked.
So as in...
playing devil's advocate here, but like...
Yeah.
You're trusting what you think is
Mm-hmm.
right. What happens if the government doesn't lie to you?
Yeah, well, going off the track record of the last 20
yeah.
years, I was pretty confident going in.
I don't think anyone can ever trust mainstream media or the government again. Almost on anything.
Absolutely not. And
Ever.
this is the thing that the I guess the vaccine debate, or lack thereof, has really highlighted is how the political establishment and the media establishment are no longer fit for purpose.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just there as window dressing, and they're no longer viable. And I did an event with a guy called Peter Bogosian in Melbourne with the Discernible crew, and he's sort of a rock star academic. And he was saying, you know, that you got to build your own institutions now because you can't change these institutions from the inside, and it's about building your own. Similar to what you guys are doing.
It's kind of scary though, because now, like, what if we're someone's mainstream media source and we've got just as much?
Yeah, Raunchy pulling the strings. The puppet masters over at Raunchy.
Yeah, but like that's what I mean. Like now, there's distrust in mainstream, and they put trust in something else, but that something else might be just as fucked up.
Well, trust is a funny thing, right? Because trust takes time to build and to earn, right? You earn a trust, and it's hard to make and easy to break trust. So I think that's why you've got to be always forthright and honest and own your mistakes when you make them, because that shows a depth of character. And so yeah.
Did you make any mistakes in Adelaide?
No, I didn't make any mistakes. You know what's so funny about Adelaide, right?
Because didn't you have some protesters?
So in Adelaide, I do this bit in my show about Amber Heard and women who make up fake stories and make it harder for the next woman to come forward who's got a legitimate story to tell.
Yep.
And I did this joke, and I had this purple-haired bint who was an annoying heckler who worked for the festival in Adelaide. She was a problematic heckler all night, and deliberately so.
It's interesting that she works for the festival and she's heckling you.
And then she went and made up a story that I threatened her with rape during the show. And
why did you do that?
Well, I didn't. But my phone malfunctioned that night and the recording didn't take. So an AFL legend who was attended the night before had sent one of his mates in who was a senior copper with Adelaide Detectives.
Yeah.
And he was prepared to say I didn't say that because he sat there and watched it. But my non-binary sound technician came to the rescue.
Really?
Because they've been sitting there all week hearing me extol my philosophy about art and everything that's wrong with it in this country. And he said, no, Corey didn't say
He said or they said?
They said yes.
Yeah,
Look, I assume it's pretty hard when you see a person with stubble and try and refrain from referring to them with the wrong pronoun.
But the non-binary person...
Yeah, and I thought that was testament to how powerful my show was. But Adelaide was a stunning success, mate. I sold out a lot of my gigs, and I was locked out of all the showcase spots, you know, because of, you know, personal politics, etc. And then to sell the tickets that I did was quite an achievement. And there was a comedian next to me, and I don't want to use the word comedian, who's a non-binary who was there on an arts grant, who sold a fraction of the amount of tickets that I did, and won the award for the best comedy.
Amazing.
So, you know, now these awards are becoming badges of dishonour in a way.
This is sort of what we spoke about with Ed the other day. Like,
Ed
you don't
was
need to
saying
have a message.
He's like, people will come away from comedy, and if there's not 5 minutes of no laugh, they're like, oh, all they did was jokes. That's all they did for an hour was do comedy.
Well, not even that. I mean, this modern left-wing comedy has just become a victim impact statement. And you saw it at the gala, and you can see it in the metrics online. I mean, I went through and looked at the numbers at some of the views that some of those Melbourne Comedy Festival clips have on their YouTube channel. Some of them have got 600 views, and they've been up there for a month. I put a rape joke up from SBS, and I had 5,000 views in one day.
Yeah.
And my account shadow banned.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
That's from your haters, though, going, look at this cunt.
Wow.
Sharing it.
But it was all the vaccine stuff too.
Yeah.
So, you know, they are losing a cultural election in a landslide, and the ones who can't see it are just blinkered by ideology. And as far as I'm concerned, I want them to keep the blinkers on because they're cancelling themselves into irrelevance.
Yeah.
And I'm very excited.
I think it's quite brave for your sound tech to come out and go against their own
Fucking
people.
oath it was. And I bought him them a gift for doing so because, it could have quite easily just said, oh, yeah, that guy's a prick.
Yeah.
I heard what he said and fuck him, let's get rid of him
I'm on your
because
team
they were going to can me.
Yeah.
And that was in, after the 4th show or something. So it was very stressful. But, all's well that ends well, and those who laugh the last laugh the hardest and carried that momentum into Melbourne. And, what a month that was.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, are you doing any reflection? Because now that you're getting notoriety from all this sort of style, are you doubling down knowing that it's going to help propel your comedy and your ticket sales? Or are you aware that, like, what's the word? Not pigeonholing, but like,
I
you're
never
going to go that hard or go harder.
I didn't never want to be pigeonholed as the anti-vax
comic
comedian or a
Yeah.
shot comic or an anti-woke comic. Like anyone who's known my body of work for longer than 2 years knows that I've got a breadth and depth
Yeah,
to
you've
it.
always, even when I first saw you fucking 8 years ago.
So, it was really nice to reconnect. It was nice to find the person that I was and the comedian that I was at the beginning of 2021 again. I felt like I really connected with that, and it shows through, and it's authentic, and it was really nice to have the resonance in Melbourne that I did, because this perception of Melbourne that it's all full of these blue hair, purple hair, non-binary, polyamorous, fair trade losers. The majority of people in Melbourne are normal. They go to the footy. I mean, you see how many people go to the footy, and it's just a small group who've got the cultural megaphone and imposing their taste on everyone.
Yeah, that sucks as well. And also, because the majority don't give a fuck, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, and the majority don't want them to feel offended, so they think that everyone agrees with them. But reality is you're just silent to not go, well, actually, it's not that bad, because who am I to say if you're offended? I won't be like, well, you shouldn't be offended.
Yeah.
You just go, oh, fucking, and you just don't say anything. It's like what normal people do. If I was like, man, this fucking dog, he called me a bitch, you'd be like, oh, man, that sucks. You wouldn't go, well, I found it funny. And I think that's what happens with the majority.
Empathy. Yeah,
empathy.
We got better shit to do than complain about trivial things.
Victim mentality is, you're right, man. It's a fucking plague.
Well, and this is what's so wrong.
In life as well, not even just with comedy.
100%. And when it manifests in a personal sense, victimhood is a terrible thing.
Yeah.
When it manifests in a national sense, like the Chinese or the Israelis, they see themselves as victims. And to an extent, the Chinese are. But it manifests in unhealthy ways when victimhood is the sort of central part of your philosophy. So, I try not to see myself as a victim. And
I think
we're winning because of it.
They do get a little bit. Well, even the Russian people, like.
Yeah, you were saying you felt when you were talking to Russians over in Bali.
Yeah.
They felt embarrassed to say that they were Russian.
Yeah, and it has nothing to do with them as a person.
Yeah, and it's also they're not necessarily. They're not bad people at all.
No, and I like some of the stuff that's happened to them. They vindicate. They actually feel.
Yeah.
Fucking.
Well, and
we probably have a lot in common with them in that regard, don't we?
And some of the Russians that I've spoken to on these situations are not embarrassed of Russia themselves. They're more worried about, if you say you're Russian, it's the people from the outside and their their biased opinions on what a Russian is and what they're like. Whereas every Russian I've met is a fucking legend.
It's funny when you go to parts of Asia, though, and you see hotels with signs that says no Russians, no Israelis, It's just like...
In Thailand, I think they're a little bit forceful.
Yeah.
The Russian mafia over there is pretty heavy, and so they're not as liked over in Thailand. I know that. But
even like the Chinese with that victim stuff, like... TikTok is not doing anything worse than Facebook or fucking Instagram or Twitter. Well, actually, maybe Twitter's cleaned up now.
They're all doing the same thing, but I think TikTok's got a different tactic in the sense that it is trying to dumb down the Chinese competitors or enemies.
Yeah.
You know, like I think we've talked about this before, where in China, TikTok is doing science, technology, engineering, mathematics.
Yeah.
Here it's pronouns.
Yeah.
But isn't that algorithmic as well, based off what people are looking at in your area? Or?
Yeah, but they can promote further. So if it's on your For You page, or
Now it's banned in government. Like TikTok's banned in government buildings. Facebook is just as intrusive.
Yeah, but it's not. Well, do you know what's so funny is that when Donald Trump took power and there was the trade war and there was a negotiation, one of the first items of business was to negotiate the transfer of ownership of Grindr. The gay
Who owns it?
The Chinese.
Really?
Right, because espionage has this rich history of homosexuals who, because they've had to get used to hide in plain sight and...
Not anymore.
Not anymore, but, to think that the Americans and the Chinese were sitting there negotiating over Grindr because the Americans are worried about the members of their security establishment having, themselves identified via dick pics or something. You know what I mean? Like, that blows my mind.
It's hard to tell Chinese apart as is.
Well, have you even seen the Apple iPhones are constantly every 5 seconds taking
that's fucked.
photos of you?
You seen that?
No.
Right.
So if you look at you
infrared
in infrared and you're got your phone on or phone, it's constantly taking
every 5 seconds taking a photo in infrared.
And they said
it's scary, man.
At one point it was a conspiracy theory, and then Apple owned up and said, yeah, we're doing it to refine our
it's all about product refinement. All about product refinement.
Yeah, refine our Face ID. So it's constantly. So when I'm sitting there, we're looking at Pornhub, having a wank. Fucking cheers, cunts.
I always think someone's watching, so I'll make sure it looks a bit bigger and I'll last a bit longer than normal.
I try to make it bigger. It doesn't work.
That's because it's
fucking
already
not
big.
what I saw this morning on West Coast Highway Branch. Christ, mate.
And if you want to know what we're talking about,
Up in joke too.
The old
check it
sea
out.
cucumber fucking left the water.
Yeah, it's gone for a little hike.
Yeah.
But we do. Well, Corey, you're going to be on Up in Joke too, and people are always asking us what the well, people just don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Really, we found because
it's true.
Rule of thumb, people are dumb.
Well, it's just it's a for lack of a better word, it's a comedy show, comedy variety show.
Yeah.
Where we have stand-up comedy, live performances,
sketches,
video sketches,
public pranks, character stuff, kind of like the old sketch house.
Yeah.
I guess.
The Tension 11 preview, which we just watched, and I had fucking hairs on the back
You'd
of my
love
neck,
it.
mate.
Yeah, man, I grew up on those.
Oh,
Tension
just thinking
vids.
of some of it. And our intro video, we just did a premiere at Whitey's. Oh, fucking, he has nailed it.
That's pretty good.
He's so talented.
He's that is fucking losing it, and the build up towards the end, it's very good.
Yeah.
And then even you would have seen this morning the little secondary videos that come after it with the helicopter drops, and
we got a premiere rap song debuting.
Yes.
And we have Who's Rhyme finishing the show, and then we've got some surprise celebrity guests as well.
Yeah, and we do
international celebrity.
If you didn't
guests.
come to Up in Joke 1, the characters are all continued on for Up in Joke 1, but we've done a recap video that will help you understand what each character's sort of things are about. So yeah.
And then so stand up from Corey, White, and Tarbo.
And me.
Oh yeah, and you're doing 5.
Just 5.
Yep.
I'm only doing 5 in the first half.
Yeah.
On the back of.
So me and Buddha will be
Floggins.
hosting. Me and Brian from Green Reapers.
I really want Whitey to do.
I'd love to see
just a
Whitey
couple
do.
of jokes.
Just 3 minutes of stand up would be sick.
I think he'd do okay.
Yeah,
I reckon he'd be all right.
Yeah. He's got
good riffs on the pod.
He's and
They go unnoticed.
But he's very
He's a dark horse.
Yeah. And he's very endearing. He's always smiling, so he'll get you on board. Like I think he's just Whitey, I know you listen, so
And I reckon he'd be your style as well. He would be unhinged and non-PC.
Bro, he's ruthless. Because the other day when we were filming at my place, and I won't give away what he did, but there's something there that's sentimental to the elderly neighbours next door, and it's just like there are so many casualties in war. This needs to go. It's like fuck, Whitey, Jesus! But it made the scene funnier.
Well, and the first casualty of war is the truth. So what actually happened there, no one knows.
I didn't see it. Was it in the clip?
It's in the Terminator, the Terminator.
No, I didn't
thing.
see it. It just.
Yeah, it's there. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wasn't that bad?
Yeah, but it's not that bad in the scene. You don't notice it. Doesn't make it that much funnier. But I would have upset the elderly couple next door.
Right. But yeah, what else has been fucking going on, man? You've done Adelaide, done Melbourne.
Yeah, so Melbourne was a real coup. So this is a real funny story, right? So, and every comedian's going to be onto this trick next year, you bastards. Get your own fucking ideas. But I ran 2 shows in Melbourne because I was worried that the festival was going to cancel me. So I had a show that I ran as an insurance policy, which I registered under someone else's name.
Okay.
And I just called it, something generic as a showcase gig. And it sold out every night without having to do very much.
Power of a name, bro.
Right.
The
And the venue's just going, how the fuck are you guys getting all these punters in? And people were rocking up thinking they're getting Dave Hughes and Peter Hellier and they're getting me and fucking Wolfie and, all the other comics that I like. Yeah. And they were great shows. And people walking away going, fuck, comedy still exists in this town. And it was very refreshing. So, yeah, that was a really good laugh. And to see the way the attitude of many of the comics changed towards me, because in Adelaide, in the first week in Melbourne, many of them, would get up from a table I sat down at or, wouldn't make eye contact with me in the artist bar. Fuck. And then by the end, everyone wanted to buy me a drink and, and be my friend. So it was great on a personal PR level. And to rip a bunch of money out of the Melbourne Comedy Festival is always sweet.
Well, it's good that they let you have your show as well.
Yeah, well, Susan Provan, when she went out to defend her reputation and legacy after the death of Barry Humphries, because this was the best joke at the festival and Barry Humphries' career. And I said it earlier, I said, Barry's going to hold on until the last weekend of the festival and he's going to die once they announce the award winner. and fucking sure enough... Oh, Celeste fucking carked it.
Who won the award? Was it the...
fucking no one you've ever heard of and nor should you hear of. But yeah, and it's really opened the door. Because this is the thing about death. I mean, I don't know if you guys have experienced death in your personal life, but it gives you an emotional license to say things in death that you didn't in life or didn't feel like you had the courage to. And with the cancelling of Barry Humphries from the Melbourne Comedy Festival, a man who pioneered the industry in this country.
Was that when he said was it racist?
So he made some comments about transgender people. He said that it was self-mutilation and that it was a bit of a fashion. And that's very benign comments. But you got to remember, this was back in 2016 maybe, and this was the height of... that climate where you couldn't fucking say anything.
Well, Dave got done for the pussy wagon.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they changed the name of the award and he was effectively ostracised, isolated, alienated. But he wasn't cancelled, according to the festival director, even though he was persona non grata. And she said that we didn't cancel Barry Humphries, we don't cancel people, and we don't ban people. So now that Susan's opened the door for me on that, and everyone else, the knives are out and the bloodletting is in full swing, and Miriam Margolis weighed in, and anyone who's worth their salt.
What did she say? She's
she said
loose as fuck,
it was disgusting the way the festival treated him, and it bloody well was. And to do it at that stage in his life, and Susan Provan sort of threw some of the younger comedians under the bus on ABC, saying that, it was the young upcoming comedians who are connected with the 2 agencies that work hand in glove with the festival, which is Century and Token. And they're, of a certain political and sexual persuasion, and they thought they were being revolutionaries by saying that, we're not going to stand for this. We want the award change.
I feel like that wouldn't be too far off the truth, would it?
It's exactly what they thought. And, Hannah Gadsby refused to accept the award while it was called the Barry. She wanted the name changed. And this is post-Nanette when, her star was very bright. And she took a very brave and principled moral stand, but neglected to tell everyone that the agency she's represented by also has a few comedians who've got some questionable allegations made about them, and that there's non-disclosure agreements involved. So it's just hypocrisy and this political adolescence, really. And they thought that they were being revolutionaries. And they were just being politically adolescent brats, and it's blown up in their face. And they don't even have the courage to come out and defend their actions. They set Sammy J out, the cliche white male. Let's go out. You go out and defend them. Well, you know, he didn't make the decision. The board made the decision, and why aren't they defending themselves? So a lot of people want the board to resign, and I'm of the view that the festival cannot pay tribute to Barry Humphries without expressing some contrition and reflecting upon the way they treated him, and not just him, the Australian public for the last 10 years, because Susan Proven's been in the job 30 years next year. 30 years. And one of the first things she did when she took over the directorship of the Melbourne Comedy Festival was remove the term limits, and she made herself director for life. Who else do you know who's done that in recent times? And what they've done, they've, you know, foisted their taste on an entire nation, and they've killed the brand of comedy in the public mind. And you only have to look at the online metrics to illustrate that point. You only have to go and see the shows that all the Token and Century acts putting on. And this is the dirty secret. Century and Token, they say, well, our acts sold out. But what they do is they give away most of the tickets as complimentary tickets.
Yeah.
And they go, oh, look, we sold out. We're putting on an extra show. So they're creating a perception that these acts have broad popular appeal. But they don't. It's all smoke and mirrors. And then when they leave the safety of the bubble of Melbourne and Sydney, and you see what happens when they go out into the real world and real Australia, they bomb.
Yeah.
As someone whose Century's putting on this Perth Comedy Fest, I'll say no tickets have been given away. I'm selling all of my tickets.
Yeah, but you're not famous enough for them to have to fucking give away your tickets, Delbs. And you know what? As soon as you start selling tickets, they'll come to you.
Yeah.
But you know what? Like, they hold the keys to a broken machine, and I want Susan and her 2IC Gideon to stay at the helm for as long as possible. It's one of the funniest things I did in Melbourne. So the night after I got punched, I've gone into the festival club, which is, you know, the comedy festival's official artist bar, and it's just this sea of NPCs and they thems and bloody completely perfunctory personalities that are entirely shaped by algorithms.
Yeah.
And I saw the festival assistant festival director down there, and he's looking over it like he's fiefdom, like he was in the Butterbing or something, you know. And I went up and, you know, said g'day, introduced myself, and shook his hand. And as soon as he clicked who I was, I could just see he was trembling, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, how's Melbourne been for you? I was like, really good, mate. Selling heaps of tickets. I said, how's the metrics been for you guys? He goes, oh, it's a bit early for that sort of data. I said, I can tell you anecdotally, you're hemorrhaging. And the public have abandoned you in droves. And the only metric you go on is how many bar sales you do at the Max Watts Festival Club. And I said, I think it's a product of the vapid cultural engineering you guys have been engaged in for over 10 years. And he's just looked at me and goes, I don't know what you mean. And if you use a multi-syllable word in Melbourne that's not intersectionality, they just look at you like a dog that's been shown a card trick. And I said to him, look, I didn't expect that you'd know what I mean. And I shook his hand and I walked off. But it's quite intimidating when a little short bloke with a black eye comes up and tells you you're shit at your
With
job.
a black eye or black guy?
No. I roll solo.
Just for diversity.
No.
Well, it's good that they let you have your show on the plus side.
Well, you know, they're all
That's
about
the plus of the LGBTQI
inclusivity,
plus.
aren't they?
Yeah.
You know, so what's beautiful is we're getting to weaponize their own ideology against them. And they've tied themselves in all sorts of knots, and they cannot get out of it. And, you know, like the old saying, give a liar enough rope. Well, we've given the cultural elite enough rope, and, you know, they're in a corner. And I don't see a way out for them. It becomes more embarrassing the longer the current board sits.
And on that note, this board needs to unsit.
You need to bounce.
Yeah.
Yep.
Enjoy the rest. Good to see you.
See you, Delbs.
Thanks, bro.
Good
See you on the
Delby.
show.
Cheers, old son. Delby's bouncing off because we filmed a bit longer than we thought this morning for Up and Joke.
This might need to go out in the bin, man.
Okay, cool. Chuck the chicken in the bin.
The bin chicken.
So I see this, what you're talking about playing out, not just in comedy, like everywhere. So you see Tucker Carlson's a perfect example. Now, he's not a perfect example of where we should be directed, but he's not afraid to call out. He's anti-war, you know, anti-globalist, and he'll call that out. And it's not long ago that the left were the ones on that side.
Remember when they were anti-war and suspicious of international pharmaceutical companies and the media and the government, and now they are just these bootlicking supplicants who love every institution they used to detest. And
Yeah.
It's the right is the counterculture now.
Yeah.
And the right are, I guess, the champions of comedy. And that terrifies me because I remember how the right behaved when they didn't like what comedians said.
Yeah. And that is the concern because, when you've got like a left and a right and two sides opposing each other, instead of trying to find a happy ground or just trying to find truth, that's where that's where I think breakdowns in communication happen, and
that's where I think comedy should reside. The highest compliments I've ever had in my life in stand-up is, and this happened in Melbourne, someone said, I don't know if you're left or right, gay or straight, victim or perpetrator. And comedy shouldn't belong to a sphere of ideology. It should sit in the middle as a check and balance on bullshit and hypocrisy because both sides do it. And I think, comedy is precious, and it's the last thing I know that's real in the era of deep fakes and sophisticated propaganda. And a comedy club is the most pure form of democracy because you can't control how you vote.
Yeah.
Laughter is an involuntary response, and that's why sometimes, younger women have a problem with me is because they're angered and amused at the same time.
Yeah.
And the coexistence of those emotions kind of,
Yeah, they're angry that they're finding what
that
you're saying
I
funny.
won.
Yeah.
You laughed, I won.
Yeah. But the uprising of, or the rise in popularity of Tucker Carlson mirrors the rise in popularity of Donald Trump, and someone who's willing to call out certain things. And yeah, again, sometimes he'll lean in too much, just like Trump, and you'll be like, yeah, you're going a bit too far. I love everything he says. I don't disagree with everything he says, but he's not afraid to pull some punches and call out some of the big dogs. And you can see, like, he was the number one show on television, and Fox has fired him, I think, because of the Dominion voting thing is what I'm hearing, is they've actually... Fox has had to pay a big fucking fine for the allegations. But in 2016, it wasn't every Democrat saying that the electric voting things were faulty anyway? Like,
look, I mean, that country is a basket case, particularly its media sector, and Fox News is no stranger to all these sorts. I mean, what was the last presenter that they had to let go of with a very big golden handshake because of the Roger Ailes stuff? I mean... Fox News is a basket case, and I always viewed Tucker Carlson as this sort of fake populist who harnessed the legitimate outrage and concerns of the populace and channeled them in a way or a direction that suited the elites. Maybe I was wrong about Tucker.
Well, what I did like about him, and I seen recently on a podcast, is him realising he was wrong back, like when he championed the war in, I think, Afghanistan or Iraq. He championed that idea and then realised everything I've been reporting is not, it's not been proven true. In fact, it's the opposite, and we're there for...
And when was the last time you heard anyone from the mainstream press admit that they were wrong and have that sort of reflection and depth of character?
Yeah, and that's why I do like, and again, every voice that I listen to on social media, I'm always wary of the fact that they do have their own underlying biases. I have my own underlying biases, but I do like the way Russell Brand approaches his thoughts, whereas he will point out he'll point out his opinion, but then he'll also say, "But this is the message we're getting. This is actually the reality of the situation. Now you can draw your own conclusions." But he'll just point out the lies, and I like that. He won't force his opinion on you. He will just say, "This is the reality of the situation. Let's draw our own conclusions." And that's not what the media does. They are supposed to be reporting on the news in an unbiased manner and giving us the information we need to make our own decisions. But they're not doing that. They're telling us what it is, and that is not reporting the news.
Manufacturing consent and the engineering of the public mind. And, I think we've talked about this on the pod before about manufacturing consent and how all that started at the beginning of the First World War when the Americans desperately wanted to become involved in the European war, but the public was isolationist, didn't want a bar of European wars.
Yeah.
But the American financial class was heavily indebted to the Germans and the British. So they were itching to get in because they thought we might fucking lose out because we've lent so much money.
Yeah.
And they turned a pacifist public into warmongers in 6 months.
Yeah. That was through Pearl Harbor, wasn't it?
No, that was Walter Lippmann and Edward Bernays, who was Sigmund Freud's nephew.
Okay.
And if you want to watch this, the documentary about that, it's called The Century of the Self, done by Adam Curtis on the BBC, and I highly recommend everyone watches all of the Adam Curtis films.
Yeah.
They're some of the greatest contributions to journalism in my lifetime, I think.
Yeah, wow. Because and that's the thing. We just had Anzac Day gone recently, and for me, it's become a day of. It makes me really sad, like really sad. I have that feeling of empathy and thoughts, and I try and give my reflection on the days and thanks for the people who've served and lost their lives and whatnot, but more so that they've had to do it to serve the fucking the financial elite and their corporate
empire.
interest, and we can pretend that they were trying to stop Hitler, and we can try and put that in our head that that's the reason they had to go to war, but it wasn't, because that was happening for a few years before that, and it wasn't until they were personally affected financially that they really wanted to get involved. And that really just, I get that on that day, I still feel, and I still like give memory or thoughts to the people who have fallen. But it's a day of like sadness for me.
And Anzac Day annoys me because the slogan is "lest we forget," but I think more aptly it should be "lest we remember," because most of the diggers who took part in the First World War were disgusted at the mendacity and waste they'd been conned into participating in for king and country. And they saw their mates die in the most horrific way. And many of them, when they came back, were radicalised. They joined the trade unions. And everyone forgets this in our country's history. And then you've got this new generation of kids who are 2 generations removed from the Great War. And they march with the medals that their ancestors were given for their service, and they couldn't tell you where they were when they got it. They couldn't point it out on a map, and they're not even sure if they're honouring their wishes. I mean, you don't know how they felt about the war. Many of them never spoke about it because they were so disgusted and traumatised by what they saw. And I don't like the way Anzac Day has become this sort of marketing campaign for nationalism. And Billy Hughes famously said something that it was a unifying moment for 6 disparate colonies that hadn't had a unifying moment, and the nationhood would be sealed in blood. And it was a way of binding together 6 colonies into a nation. So yeah, Anzac Day does grind my gears a little bit, but having said that, I was a piss-fit West Coast Eagles fan with a black eye in Collingwood country on Anzac Day, fucking giving all sorts of heckles. I had a heckle in Melbourne. I said I was a West Coast Eagles fan, and this bloke goes, "Oh, yeah, how's Ben Cousins?" I said, "He's good as clean." And this bloke was a Collingwood supporter. I said, "How's Joffa?" Thank you very much.
Fucking hell, man. That was pretty predictable. I feel like you just look at him and you could see a bit of fucking. There's something about that guy.
I'm not going to comment on Joffa's conduct. There's far bigger fish to fry in my world.
Oh, 100%. But yeah, the day itself has lost. And like for my granddad, I remember my granddad talking to us about things like war, and he was part of the not the D-Day. He was the distraction up the coast,
right?
So sent in to distract.
The decoys.
Yeah, the decoy, and they got fucked up as well. And he was same sort of situation where he felt like he had been used, and he was not a very high speaker of I guess countries sending people to war to die for them. For their corporate interests, but he didn't really like talking about it because of what you just said before.
It was difficult to talk about, and you know the things that those blokes suffered. There wasn't the medical terminology to describe those syndromes of what they were going through.
Yeah, but I couldn't imagine, especially now with the kids we have now at 17, 18, being shipped off to go to war. Could you imagine that? Like,
it's funny you say that. I got talking to a bloke in Melbourne who just finished his 3-month infantry course at Kapuka that the Army offers.
Yeah.
It's the intro to infantry. 3 months, you get paid. And he said at the end of the 2nd month, the instructor tried to sell him on a fucking Kentucky tour to Ukraine. You go and be a comms assistant or something, right? This is what's happening in the Defence Forces.
Yeah,
and you see today that the Australian Defence Force is issuing $50,000 retention bonuses for people to stay because they can't retain the staff because the morale in the Defence Force is so bloody low that they're having to offer 50 grand. And I know for a fact that some of these blokes are leaving the army to go and make 60 grand a month training in the Special Forces in the Gulf States.
Fuck.
So what's fucking 50 grand going to do for a retention bonus? I'm going to make 60 grand in a month fucking training Qatari Special Forces.
Yeah.
I'll work half the year and have the next 2 years off.
Yeah.
Earned it overseas tax-free.
Yeah.
Fuck, who's flying? I mean, fuck.
Yeah, fuck. And even that situation over in Ukraine, that you could see that the pushback on that. Now people are wise to it. They're seeing it. Like, and we've just spoken about this, the cultural change.
Yeah.
People can see
The pendulum shifting
it's
rapidly.
Not, it's very obvious what's happening. And
But do you know what concerns me is that the pendulum shift and an economic crisis coincide, and that lays the groundwork for a vicious backlash and a very quick one.
did I read that's usually the premise for World War I and World War II? That happened just before?
Yeah. It's all just a little bit of history repeating.
It does seem a bit like that.
Yeah, well, what did Twain say? History doesn't repeat, but it does tend to rhyme.
Yeah, fuck. I guess, what are you up to date with what's going on in that situation? Because they're just, I do see that they're trying to, they're still funneling money over there, and there's no accountability for, and they're starting to, in the Senate hearings, they're starting to ask where's the money going, and there still doesn't seem to be any.
Look, it's going to become very toxic as a policy issue to saying we're going to send more public money to Ukraine when your own backyard is in a bin fire. I mean, United States, case in point. Australia, I met a bloke in Melbourne who said he spent the last 6 months organising logistics to send the Australian Bushmaster vehicles into the Ukraine, and they're just getting vaporised.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just throwing money away. And yeah, look, war, what is it good for? Absolutely, arms manufacturers and iron ore miners, and
Yeah.
I don't know where it's going to end, but I hope it's not in a further escalation.
And that's the thing, when you've got weapons manufacturers help influencing policy, whether we go to war or not, you've got big pharmaceutical companies influencing policy, whether we implement mandates on COVID jabs and stuff. When you've got such conflicts of interest in every facet of our lives, there's got to be a point where, like, even the people who are, like you said, called them people with blinkers on, surely they're going to start to see the conflicts of interest. Surely they're going to see what's like the stuff with the Wuhan lab and the investigations that's going on now. It's very.
I mean, a conflict of interest seems to have evaporated from relevance in politics, especially in Australia. I mean, once upon a time, a conflict of interest was a serious thing. As a lawyer, a conflict of interest is a serious thing. But they don't seem to really matter anymore, and it astounds me.
Yeah, it's getting to that point where I've almost stopped caring and stopped trying to point it all out. You can see it. It's one of those things where when it's happening, you just watch it, and there's no point you just going, "What the fuck?" Because it's like there's nothing. Me making that observation does nothing. And what I do is I tweet it, so it's dated.
But I found this with the vaccine stuff too. I think it's more powerful and persuasive, not to be "I told you so."
Yeah.
And to just carry yourself with that quiet confidence that yes, okay, we were right. We went through a lot of shit, but we forgive.
Yeah.
Don't forget, but, we're not going to be arrogant pricks about it. And my joke about, unvaccinated sperm being the next Bitcoin, I'm not going to rub it in anyone's face if it is. So it's been really gratifying and just this sense of emphatic vindication. And
it's one of those things, and I haven't talked about this on the pod before, but I'll say it now. So my mum's stuff over in Thailand was pretty fucked, obviously. For any listeners that knew what happened, a couple of weeks ago she had another setback. It got really bad, really dicey. It was pretty fucking it's pretty bad. Looks to be, fingers crossed, this time we're on the mend. are all good. But this whole thing has, unfortunately, I didn't need another reason to fucking hate the jab. I didn't need another reason to hate the mandates and the fucking indoctrination that people were being told they won't be able to travel, they won't be able to do this if they don't get it. So my mum, the only reason my mum and dad got vaccinated was so they could move to Thailand because they thought they weren't going to be able to fly over there. Unfortunately, a month after they got there, it was all of that was removed. And my mum's issue is a vaccine. Okay, we can't say 100% because no one ever says 100%, but it's been suggested pretty highly likely that her blood clots and thrombosis were caused by the vaccination, which then caused some pretty severe issues over a long period of time. So it started in her gut. I won't go too much into my mum's own details, but basically, without going into it too much, it was a long process. The blood clots caused some issues, and she got pretty fucked up from it. Nearly died. Still isn't out of the water.
And did your mum have the AstraZeneca?
AstraZeneca.
Which has quietly been removed from the Therapeutic Goods Administration, by the way.
Yeah.
With no media attention. I mean, that fact that that's been removed without so much as a fucking peep is a travesty. And everyone remembers how people carried on when you dared to say that there's adverse reactions. That this is not safe. We are not being told the truth. And then to hear stories like your mum, and thank goodness your mum looks like she's out of the woods there. But I mean, how many people weren't as lucky as your mum and his stories have been not told and are ignored?
Well, so again, like I said, mum's not out of the woods yet, but yeah, she's gotten through and hopefully that's the end of the dramas. But you're right, there's so many people and they wouldn't have been reported because it's very hard to get a doctor to say, yes, that was a vaccine side effect. And it's just sad. It saddens me. I do feel vindicated in my decision.
Yeah, no, I feel the same thing, man, because I live in fear for people that I love. But do you know what I found everywhere I went, from Adelaide and Melbourne, was there's this deep sense of betrayal in the community. They feel like they were betrayed by the government, they were betrayed by the media, they were betrayed by the police, and they were betrayed by the arts community. Because the arts are supposed to be the last check and balance on bullshit and hypocrisy and a bulwark against this sort of nonsense. And the establishment comedians just rolled over and they traded their integrity for their industry affiliation, as did the entire journalistic class. Yeah. And there's this widespread sense of betrayal in the community. And I understand the stab in the back politics that gave rise to Hitler's Germany. We were betrayed. They fucked us over. And it scares me, man. It really does.
Yeah, because you don't know which way it goes. We talked about the right and their reactions.
Oh, and this is the thing we're talking about, what's happened with the lefties. And, I'm a firm believer that people are going right out of spite. And I hear it from across the socio-economic spectrum, and part of me wonders whether it's a deliberate tactic, to destroy progressivism, and then, hey, let's go full-fledged with the right, and we're storming the Capitol. I mean, I don't know. And you know what's funny? In Melbourne, I have an uncle who is a serious professional in what he does. We've disagreed for many a moon on just about everything politically, and we were sitting there having a whiskey in Melbourne, and he goes, you know what's so scary to me, Corey, is that you and I agree on most things right now.
Yeah, it's crazy.
We're talking about, this new narrative about the war drums that are beating with China and the US. We've got to prepare for war, and we've got to spend all this money we don't have on fucking submarines that are absolute rot.
Oh, my God.
And he said to me...
Who's the Greens guy from WA? He's been calling that out pretty heavily. Fuck. He's got a disability.
Jordan Steele-John?
Yes. Fuck,
Good on him.
Yeah, he's still...
Him and Paul Keating are about the only ones. But he said to me, in his eyes, the biggest threat to the safety of Australia and the sovereignty of Australia was not the Chinese, but the supranational institutions like the World Economic Forum and the globalists, and subordinating the ability of the Australian governments to make laws for the benefit of the people because they've signed away to treaties. These international bodies that are accountable to no one.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really fascinating. It reminded me of that scene in Network where we no longer live in a world of nations and ideologies. The world is a college of corporations.
And these are, I think it's when these sorts of messages are given to us and these ideologies are put to us, they're forced down your throat, and that is the biggest issue. We going back to jab, going back to these are if they had to come across with like the message, these are the best options we feel that we can try and do. We can't sit here and do nothing. This is what we feel is the best option. Try it if you want. Use it if you think it's going to work for you. Do your due diligence and double check because there are side effects, blah, blah, blah. But that wasn't the messaging we got with the jab, for example. It was like, no, it's safe. You're a conspiracy theorist if you think that you need to be cautious. And now I see Justin Trudeau the other day saying, people were rightfully cautious. And
I saw that video.
And there's been so many people doing the stitch-ups. And I know you said you were cautious of deep fakes, but these things are like, for you to say one thing 18 months ago and then directly can contradict what you've been saying for the last 2.5 years on camera, when we have it on camera, the exact opposite of what you've been saying, basically flat out denying what you said, and and no one says anything about it. No one.
And that footage of Trudeau I found astounding. I mean, he couldn't have done a bigger 180. It hasn't happened in Australia.
No.
Daniel Andrews and Mark McGowan haven't said anything similar to what Justin Trudeau has. But I'm not convinced that video was real. I mean, I'm skeptical of its authenticity. But
you think him suggesting that there were reasons for people being cautious?
Yes.
Stuff was fake.
Yeah,
Right.
I wouldn't be surprised if that's fake.
Because the old ones were real.
The old one, well, we all saw it in real time, and the way the aggressive rhetoric around people who weren't vaccinated, the pandemic of the unvaccinated. If you want to travel, you got to be you're going to be excluded from society from an indeterminate period of time. And it was really interesting what Sammy J said in his defence of the Melbourne Comedy Festival and the Barry Award. He was talking about minorities, and unless you've experienced it, you don't know what it's like. And I thought, well, that's just beautiful, Sammy, because that's exactly how I felt when I heard society turn on me and you and the other people we hold dear, who for so long were valued in contributing members of society, and then all of a sudden we were able to be just discarded, like we were going to kill everyone's nana. And then this retreat and controlled demolition of the narrative, and it's a stage manager's exit. Exit through the gift shop, as Banksy would say.
It does feel almost. For me, it was almost so obvious what was happening that we should entertain some form of caution and
the precautionary principle that's been in operation since time immemorial.
Exactly,
yes.
it just seems so obvious, and it almost seemed it was that obvious that it was so orchestrated. That's why a conspiracy theories come into play when you completely censor. At what point have we ever seen? It might have been you who said this. Have we ever seen censorship work for the good guys? It's never been.
At no time in history have the people who've been censoring information been good people.
Yeah,
ever.
Yeah, the book burnings and then this changing of fucking what we're seeing as like the words that we can have in books. And
what about this shit with the fucking Roald Dahl novels, by the way, and trying to sanitize and remove the words like fat and ugly from some of the Roald Dahl novels? I mean, I loved those books growing up as a kid.
Yeah.
And James and the Giant Peach. I mean, what's the next one going to be? James and the Giant Simp.
Yeah.
I mean, we are breeding resilience out of children and the next generation. We're making these feeble, infantile weaklings who cannot deal with any level of emotional discomfort. We are making a society of people who are easily broken.
And if you were a conspiracy theorist,
fuck, that's what I'd be doing.
If you conspiratorially minded, like I am, you would say that is orchestrated, because who the fuck are they gonna? Who's gonna defend the rights of the people if 90% of the people are fucking,
But this is where
weak-minded.
it starts. They go in and start sanitising the past. And Immortal Technique's got this great line about the mind of a child is where the revolution begins. I'm fucking terrified for, I used to knock the baby boomers very hard, but at least the baby boomers are waking up and they're interested in things. They go to writers' festivals and they come out to comedy, but the baby zoomers terrify me. And what comes after them, because we've got children having children, and this is going to perpetuate the cycle of infantilism and people who just got an utter lack of resilience and a body of knowledge that has anorexia, really, which is one of the lines I quite often repeat. But it's terrifying. And we're watching all these things that Huxley and Orwell foretold and warned us about.
Yeah.
Play out in real time. And we're sitting here just going, fuck, the Eagles are getting spanked.
The thing that really made me feel quite odd is realising, being the guy who was into a few conspiracies going like for the last 10, 15 years, I loved the UFO stuff. I loved all of anything that was government conspiracy, like the CIA killing Kennedy. I was interested in it. And then the idea that the New World Order was going to take over and they were going to create this fucking virus and they're going to use it to implement forced vaccinations, which is going to have a microchip or whatever in it. That was the conspiracy for fucking 10, 15 years. And then it played out exactly as it happened. So part of me was just like, that's so ridiculous. But it was happening in front of me and I was like, I can't ignore this storyline that I've been told for the last 15 years and now it's fucking happening.
I was only having this conversation yesterday with my best friend's parents and, they're, I guess, conservative-minded but socially progressive. Yeah. And, the conversation that they were having, talking about, they're afraid of the rise of digital currencies and this locking us into an internet of things and censorship and deep fakes. I mean, this is the shit Alex Jones was talking about 15 years ago.
It's crazy,
and now it's coming out of the mouths of, I guess, your everyday quiet Australians who are paying attention to what's going on. And it was very telling, the Alex Jones stuff, the way he was persecuted over the Sandy Hook thing for the misinformation. But no one had a crack at him over his 9/11 theories, did they?
Nah.
I wonder why that'd be. Did you hear about the 9/11 Reading Club?
No.
77 stories in 8 seconds.
Yeah, fucking hell. The thing with when it comes to stuff like Alex Jones, and I see like Rogan talks about it as well, like ad nauseum. Like these are the things he would bring up. He would talk about Bohemian Grove, and then everyone would think he's crazy until he went there and fucking filmed it. We only know about it because of some of the things he says are fucking batshit crazy, but there's about 60 to 70% of the shit that it comes about.
Do you know what's so funny to me though, Branchy? The idea that the world is run by a satanic pedophile cult is more plausible to me now than the idea that you have rational leaders who are acting in the public interest.
Yes.
I mean,
when you've got Biden and Trump as the two leading candidates for a presidential role, one is a fucking former reality TV star and the other one can't even fucking speak or walk, goes to shake hands with invisible people that aren't there. Like, what the fuck is happening when that is your two best options and Trump is the better of those options? That's the fucking scariest fucking thing.
Well, the South Park episode rolls on and it's two political parties and one political class. But speaking of one political class, when I was in Melbourne, all the rage was Daniel Andrews flying to China on his secretive trip and not telling anyone what was being discussed, not taking any journalists with him. Then I get home and Mark McGowan's gone to China. And proposed that national cabinets sit in Beijing.
Yes, I've seen this.
Mate, I thought we were promoting the voice to Parliament, not the voice to Beijing, Marky Mark. This fucking Make-A-Wish Mussolini with his shit-eating grin, the member for Beijing. Who do you really represent, Mark? We know it's not fucking Western Australians. It's largely Andrew Forrest, Rio Tinto, Gina Reinhart and the iron ore players. And who are they swearing fealty to? Their biggest buyers, Chinese. Great strategy.
Mate. And again, that's another one that was being said for the last fucking couple of years. He's just he's in the pockets of the Chinese, and now he's doing stuff like that. It's playing out in front of you. You're like,
I think he's probably compromised by the Chinese. What you have to remember, the Chinese are very clever, and they've played a very good long game, and they know our weaknesses about ourselves and about our political system better than we do. And they have taken full advantage. And I'm sure there are Australian politicians and bureaucrats who are being compromised. China's got compromat on them.
Well, I think it wasn't there leaks from that, and we can speak about leaks in a second, but I'm certain there was leaks of the CCP infiltration and who they had in places of power, and it wasn't just like in government. They just had it in high-end, very powerful companies, like fucking even toy companies. Like they just had them placed as CEOs or, people of influence, so they could implement their own strategies very slowly over a very long period of time.
Yes. Well, and Clive Hamilton was the first person to speak about this in Australia, and he wrote a book called Silent Invasion. But part of the Chinese strategy was cultivating the barbarians, and this goes all the way back to Sun Tzu. And the barbarians are the billionaires because they have access to the political class. Yeah. And you've only got to see the way they get things done and the backhanders and, the backroom deals. And it's about networks and being able to break into the network and compromise it.
And speaking of leaks, like obviously there's been a few fucking leaks of late, but what I'm hating at the moment is seeing this trend of, and this happened, it probably happened before that, but I really started noticing it. The first time I noticed it was when Hillary they had leaked the DNC emails, and instead of going for Hillary about the content of those emails, they went for the leaker. And they're doing that every single time. I don't understand, why wouldn't you attack the content of the leak itself instead of the person who did the leaking? Assange is the perfect example.
Well, it's a classic case of leaks for thee, but not me. And when you're in politics, leaks are a weapon. You drip feed information to certain journalists that you want to get out. And, Kevin Rudd had Laurie Oakes, and there are acceptable leaks, which the political establishment wants, and that's useful information for them to leak out. But then there's the embarrassing stuff. And the stuff that embarrasses the political establishment, they don't go after the content of what was said. They go after the person who leaked it. And you've only got to look at the bloke I acted for who blew the whistle on FMG, what happened to him. Witness K, who blew the whistle on the East Timor spying allegations with Woodside. Julian Assange. What's the other bloke in fucking South Australia? Richard Boyle, who blew the whistle on the ATO and the way they were going after poor people who,
wow,
were, going to commit suicide because they had the ATO chasing them down very aggressively and needlessly. We teach our kids to tell the truth. Well, you do it at your own risk. Because if you teach your kids to tell the truth, one day they're going to be doing 90 years in prison because their parents instilled in them the value that it's important to tell the truth. And we've lost sight of two things chiefly in our culture, and it's truth and beauty. We have to go out and call a 250 kilo rainbow jelly bean stunning and brave. And we have to say, that, these lies that are peddled are the truth. And it breaks my heart, man.
It's getting a little depressing, but again, these are sort of things that once you see it, you can't unsee it. So you just see it playing out. You don't have to. I feel like I want to point it out to people, but I think the best way is for them to see it themselves.
And that's what being a good teacher is. A good teacher doesn't tell you the answer. A good teacher lets you figure it out for yourself, because that's how you develop thinking skills. And, one of the things I remember the most about my time at uni, the lecturer I respected the most, Dr. Ian Cook, he taught this unit called Power of the Media and the Public Interest. And he said to me, he was at the end of his career, he said, universities are going through a change, and they are no longer teaching people how to think, but what to think. And this is what's happened to our institutions, particularly universities, particularly the arts, is that they've been captured by these ideologues. And, the social science, Peter Boghossian, who I did that event with in Melbourne, He was one of the lead authors on the grievance affairs study, whereby they trolled all these academic journals in the sociology group, like the gender studies journal, and did shit like took a excerpt from Mein Kampf, did a word search for the word Jew, replaced it with white male, submitted it to an academic journal, was peer reviewed, and got an award, and was described as an invaluable contribution to the literature. And our university's been pumping out these kids with these fucking insane ideas that are no longer tethered to any reality. And if you let this run riot in the exact sciences, I mean, imagine if you had engineers going out there and building bridges out of balsa wood. Well, that's what's happening on a societal level. We've built bridges out of balsa wood, and intersectionality and all this, neo-progressive ideology is coming apart at the seams, and it's beautiful to watch.
It is. Yeah, a big part of I keep saying this to Delby, that it feels like we're building to something. It feels like we're building to something. And every year I keep saying that. I feel like eventually everyone's going to go, aha. But it never happens. And I don't know whether that's just my hope that we're finally seeing, we're finally learning, we're finally being told that 90% of what we've been told is a fucking lie. But then I'm an offender myself. Like, I'll know something's I'm leaning into something that's a lie, but it's convenient, or I think we've fallen into the trap of life. It's too inconvenient to go against the grain, and you might as well just fucking jump on board. And that's where I think a lot of people believe what you're saying. They're like, yeah, I get it, but I don't care. Well,
and I've said this a number of times before, but people retreat to the comfort of the lie because it absolves you of any responsibility. You don't have to do anything if you live in the comfort of a lie. And there's no death so sad as the death of an illusion. And most people in this country, and the UK and New Zealand and America for that matter, cannot comprehend the idea that the government lies to them, or the media lies to them, or they're not acting in their best interest.
But what really strikes me as odd is the fact that most people would be the first to say, yeah, of course the media's not telling the truth. Of course the media lies.
Yeah.
Yet as soon as you point out one of the lies that has they've lent into and maybe potentially
but
foolish.
at the time it was the right decision to make. And Susan Provan had the same defence when she was defending the Barry Humphries decision. So at the time, it was the right decision. So, no, it fucking wasn't. It wasn't right then, and it's not right now.
Yeah, and I can't. I think so. Disney is hopefully learning from their mistakes. Obviously, with the Amber Heard sort of stuff, they've fucked off Johnny Depp off a few projects. He's not on the next Pirates of the Caribbean. I don't think that's going to go very well. And he also wasn't in the last. What was the other one? The Harry Potter. He wasn't in that, and he was a key character in that, and they had to replace him as an actor. And I'm pretty sure that bombed as well. I don't think that was Disney, that whoever did that, or might have been. But it looks like hopefully they got rid of their CEO, who was a fucking woke monster. They've replaced him with Iger, I think it is Bob Iger, who's the opposite, or maybe the other way around, can't remember. And the key character that they have as a bad guy at the moment, I can't remember his name for the life of me. He's just been accused of assault. Jonathan Majors has just been accused of assault of his girlfriend at the time. Everyone's dropped him, but Disney this time has gone, we're not making the same mistake. We're going to wait until this court.
The presumption of innocence. Fuck, what a thing that is. Because how often has a lie got halfway around the world before the truth has time to put its pants on?
Yeah, exactly. So, you're seeing... I think people are starting to be a little bit more... Oh, I'm not out of focus. There we go. I think people are starting to get a bit more... they're on that path now. They're starting to wait. They're like, I'm not going to cast any assertions anymore because...
I'll wait to pass judgment until I'm fully apprised of all the facts. And what a radical fucking thing that is.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
So let's dive into your Melbourne trip, because I'm very interested as to what happened.
So there's a parable from ancient Greece, a fellow by the name of Aristophanes, which kind of sets all this up. Aristophanes is regarded as the father of comedy. And at the equivalent of the 403 BC Athenian Fringe Festival, poor Aristophanes got in trouble because he humiliated and embarrassed some corrupt Athenian elites.
Okay.
And they dragged his name through the mud in the courts and the media of the time. And Aristophanes had to wait 2 years for his redemption. And so that's kind of been the story that's guided my life for the last 2 years. And there was a lot of people who wanted to see me fail in Melbourne. There was a few people in Adelaide who said to me that you can't say those things in Melbourne and that you won't pull it off. And I did. So, yeah, it was a stunning success. I'm very pleased with it. But, you know, I've come a long way, but we're just getting started. There is a radical cultural shift taking place in this country. And I've been in the trenches for a couple of years and been ahead of it. And one of the funniest stories, I mean, I did make a bit of a nuisance of myself over there, I'll be honest.
I did see some of his stories. They look funny.
So one night, and I won't name this comedian, I've walked into, you know, the real comedians bar, which is called the Exford. All the losers go to the festival club, and all the people who are worth their salt go to this pub called the Exford. Classic old workman's pub.
Yep.
And anyway, clocked this famous person, comedian, won't say his name and won't say the reason why I began to throw things at him. It was Easter weekend, and all these Easter eggs have been given away, right? And I walked in and I'd had a skinful.
Yeah.
And Ronnie Neville was with me. He's going, "Fuck, you're loaded." And I was. And anyway, I grabbed these Easter eggs and I thought it'd be funny to throw Easter eggs across the bar at this person. And you got to remember, this is chockers, right?
Yeah.
And you played cricket, you played footy, golf.
Yep.
You know, like, soon as it leaves the boot,
You know.
you know.
You
Like,
know.
this is on target.
Yeah,
And anyway, first one, about 8 people deep across the bar, just thrown it. And just soon as it left the hand, I was like, this is on track for it. And I was just turning away just before it hit him each time. And I got him 3 times in a row from different parts of the bar. And he was going, "What the fuck is this? What's happening?" And anyway, I got greedy and I went for a 4th one, right?
Yeah.
And anyway, I've thrown it as soon as it left the hand. And I just got caught shot watching and admiring my work. And he had his head turned. And the last second, he's turned and looked in the direction I've thrown. And this fucking Easter egg sitting square between the eyes, right? And then him and his security have clocked me across the bar, and they just come up and confront me. And I thought his security was going to punch me.
Yeah.
And then one of the sound technicians separated us, and I went to the bar.
Yeah.
My
Of
sanctuary.
course, yeah.
And he's come up and remonstrated. He's like, "What'd you do that for?"
Yeah.
I was like, "Mate, I was just pissed, just trying to get your attention." He's like, "Why do you want to get my attention?" And I was like, "Well, look, mate, I thought, you know, your career's kind of on the downslide, and you need an up-and-comer to hit your wagon to sort of rehabilitate your credibility and reinvigorate this failing career of yours." "Who the fuck are you calling me ass?" And anyway, this is the first night I was removed from the Exford.
Yeah.
But unlike Andrew Wolf, before I got to the Exford, I made a concerted effort to befriend the bouncers.
Oh, very
And
smart.
have good chats with them, and they took care of me when they had to escort me out of the venue, and I went peacefully. And then I woke up the next day, and so Ronnie told me the story, and I was like, "Yeah, fuck, I did do that."
Yeah.
And then I was talking to some the English comics, who was like, "You should probably apologise, Corey. That's a bit of a fucking idiot thing to do."
Yeah.
So anyway, I kept looking for him to go apologise, and then the night he was in the bar to apologise, I was like, "Beaut, I'm going to go up, compose my thoughts in the bar upstairs, and then come down." I've gone upstairs, and some of Chris Franklin's crew were passing around a big joint, which is common in this bar, right?
Course.
And they just passed the baton to me, and I've hit it, and then the security guards come out, "Who's smoking that?" And I was just like,
Oh,
and I caught red, and I had to take the rap for all the boys,
Yeah.
and so I had to leave. I was like, "Fuck, there goes me opportunity to apologise."
so you're having a mare.
So
Two
anyway,
days.
the night I get clocked, I go to the closing party at the Exford, and I saw him. I got a ripped shirt and a big bloody swollen eye, and I was like, "Look, mate, I was completely out of line the other night, and I was being a fucking idiot, and I probably deserved a punch in the head.
Yeah.
But please accept my sincere apology." And he said, "That's very gracious of you, and I accept your apology, Corey."
Yeah.
And all's well that ends well. But
That's
I had only 2 complaints the whole time I was in Melbourne about some of my content, which I was very disappointed about.
yeah, right.
One, the bar manager who was present at the show where the complaint was made saw it and he goes, nothing to worry about. That was hilarious.
Yeah.
Second night, I was flying after a show, and this woman came up to me. She said, "Look, you were very funny
Yeah.
until
Oh.
you told the Israel joke. We're Jewish, and it was completely unnecessary. It was just not funny at all." And I said, "Well, thank you for your constructive feedback. Are you able to elaborate or perhaps particularise what you found unnecessary or perhaps even hurtful?"
Yeah.
And she said no, and she walked off in a huff.
Oh, fuck.
And then this group of Middle Eastern blokes came up to me and said, "Fuck 'em, bro, we love that Israel joke. Give us a fly, we'll be there." And then lo and behold, on the last night of my show, right, I had a particularly good show, and there was a couple in there who were visibly affected by MDMA.
Oh, yeah.
And anyway, after the show, they were trying to molest me, for want of a better phrase. They're like, "Come home with us. We got all this MDMA, and we got an apartment and a spa, and we just want to sleep with you." And I was like, "I'm not putting my cock in a mouth that's chewing like that." And I politely refused the invitation.
Yep.
And then anyway, I walk out, and there's another bloke I know from my time as a criminal lawyer who's rocked up with a couple of prostitutes as plus ones, and he's like, "Do you want to come back for a drink with us?" And I'm like, "Look, mate, I'd love to, but I've got a party to go to." And I was just wrapping it up with some of the people in my audience and having a beer there at the front of the Rubber Chicken in South Melbourne, and these two Lebanese Eshe fellas came up full of booze and methamphetamine, fresh out of Ramadan, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, fuck.
And they've come in just causing chaos. They started racially abusing this African guy and his wife in the pub, and the publican's like, "Nah, fucking that's not on in here," and he's thrown him out, and they had a scuffle.
Yeah.
At which point I started filming, right? I was like, "Fucking content, baby."
Yeah.
And anyway, the scuffle sort of ends, and this bloke clocks me filming, and he's come at me, "You fucking filming, bro?" And like,
Yeah.
you know, very aggressive, swung a few punches, and I dodged those.
Oh, fuck. So this was not related to comedy?
Not related to comedy, but people said that those people were in the show. I don't have confirmation of that. I'm only relying on the first-hand accounts of people who were there.
Yeah.
But anyway, I sort of had this bloke at arm's length because I was worried he's going to, hit me, and I had the right hand cocked, and then one of the blokes from my audience in the front row just come up behind him like the fucking sneaker and just put him in a rear naked choke. And this guy's gone from fuck, you go, "Oh, fucking let me go, bro. Fucking let me go. It's over, bro." And anyway, taps out, lets him go. And then he comes back like 30 seconds later with his mate, and he's pushed over this bloke's girlfriend.
Oh, fuck.
So the two blokes I was with, they're going, "Fuck that," and they've gone this bloke and started hitting him. And then his mates come and started swinging punches at me. And here I am fucking standing on the streets of South Melbourne with my blazer and my scarf, chafing with a fucking hemorrhoid, throwing punches in the middle of South Melbourne.
Fuck.
And cop one. And then the police arrived. They arrested him. I gave him a brief statement. The copper, she took my photos there. I think she liked me. And anyway, I can feel the psychological injury coming on for the purposes of criminal injuries compensation.
You're now a victim.
I am a victim now, Branchy. I am a victim. So anyway, the moral of the story is always go home with the girl with the MDMA. Or the bloke you used to work for who's come with the two Vietnamese hookers.
Both of them were better options. That's fucking... fucking hell.
So anyway...
Man, I thought this was all going to be like through like someone didn't like a joke you said.
No, well, look, I woke up on the Monday morning. My phone was going nuts, and people saying, "Mate, 3AW were talking about it on the radio." But they were running it with the narrative, these people didn't like what he had to say and they waited for him outside, and that's not what happened. And then Channel 9 got in contact with me, and they're a trusted media partner of the Melbourne Comedy Festival. So I fucking told them the truth. So they didn't want it. I was like, good. But then I used the Herald Sun, and I told them what happened, and they still ran with the wrong facts.
Fucking hell.
But this is, Australian journalism, right? I mean, it's just clickbait. And because I had the footage or partial footage of what had happened, they put it behind the paywall, and I didn't even fucking pay to read the story I was in. That's how much I give a fuck about the Herald Sun. But because Humphries had died, and the festival was on the ropes. I thought I'd use it as a chance to give them a little kick, because if that had happened to one of their anointed establishment acts, there would have been a huge fanfare in the name of safety, because the festival is obsessed with safety, right? The night after I've been punched, I've gone to the festival club for the last night, and they've got this. You ever been to a nightclub and there's that girl who at the line, she manages the line, and she's just thinks she's so important. Well, there's one of these, middle-aged white women with the black frame glasses and a little torch checking everyone's artist pass, because there's a huge market for counterfeit artist passes to get into the NPC gallery. And anyway, I was going in, and the first time, and this gentleman said, I've left my pass at home. And one of the girls he was with, look, he's a friend of mine. He worked on my show. And she's like, yeah, no worries, you can come in. And I've gone outside, and I've come back in a second time, and the guy that owned the venue I was performing at, he'd forgotten his artist pass. He was wearing a shirt with the name of the venue on it. And they wouldn't let him in. And I said, well, look, my artist pass has got the name of the venue. And his shirt says the name of the venue. I can vouch for him. He is the publican. He's the venue owner. She said, no, look, we really need to keep everyone safe in this venue.
Oh, my God.
And if you don't have an artist pass, you can't. Rules are rules. I was like, I just saw you bend the rules for one of your mates 10 minutes ago.
Yeah, fuck.
And are you getting aggressive with me? I was like, no, I'm just pointing out hypocrisy. And then he was quite, upset about it. He's like, I'm not going to be treated like this. Like I'm a leper because I don't have an artist pass. So anyway, I've gone back in, and I said, I'll meet you down at the Exford where all the real people hang out. And when I was walking out, I made a pointed comment, but this guy came in just as I was at the top of the stairs, and he's like, I forgot my artist pass. And she's like, yeah, I know you. I was like, hang on. hang on.
Fuck.
What about my safety?
I
just saw you refuse someone that in rules are rules. We can't just approach them willy-nilly and, tailor them to suit our friends. We've got to be consistent with the way you enforce rules. And she's looked at me and she's like, are you okay? I said, have a look at me. Do I look okay? I've got this beautiful... And you didn't make any mention of it. And the only bloke in the festival club who came and, said, are you all right, mate? What happened? He was an older white male in his 50s.
Just came and asked.
He's like, you all right, mate? But this girl who thought she was holding nuclear secrets in the festival club, checking everyone's artist pass. And, the festival is obsessed with safety and sanitisation.
And didn't even check on you.
And they didn't even check on me. And they still haven't checked on me. And they won't check on me because I'm giving them grief. And there's a bit more to come yet.
Isn't that interesting that, you've actually been assaulted? They don't know what happened. For all they've read in the Herald Sun, it was, and all the rumours that were going around, it was a patron of one of your shows. Surely that's something they should be investigating.
Mate, every comedian in Melbourne knew about it Saturday night. And, there was a lot of stuff that happened in that venue. Obviously, Louis Spears had that controversy with the Tibetans over his joke about the Dalai Lama. And
what, sucking the tongue?
Yeah, so on the Tuesday night, my show, about 5 minutes to go, I start hearing this chanting outside. What the fuck? And they ruin my clothes. I go downstairs, there's 150 angry Buddhists.
Yeah, fuck, Jesus.
With these ridiculous signs.
They do not represent me.
Louis Spears is not funny. What do we want? Cancellation. When do we want it? Now. And anyway, the coppers were there, overseeing the whole thing. And I was a little bit pissed off because they ruined my clothes. And I've gone out to the coppers and I just said, when the fuck are you blokes going to get the rubber bullets out?
Yeah.
We all saw what you did in 2021. At the very least, can I get a sling tackle? You know the judiciary's got your back when they're going to get charged. And to their credit, the coppers had a laugh. So the Rubber Chicken became the hub for controversy during the Melbourne Comedy Festival. And there's going to be some changes in that town next year for the festival.
Yeah. Oh, I like that the coppers had a good laugh. And last time me and you did that Vox Pops at the rally, we were giving them shit. You were doing really well, but they laughed. They were great. They were awesome.
During my time as a criminal lawyer, I had a different view to some of my colleagues who were very hostile. They had the ACAB view that all cops are bastards. I don't.
Nah,
My grandfather was a copper and he was the softest, most gentle, lovely bloke I've ever known in my life. There are a lot of people who go into it for the right reasons, and there are a lot of... The Victoria Police are very aware of the breakdown of the relationship between themselves and the community, because every copper will tell you that in order to be a good copper, you have to have the support of the community. They hemorrhaged a lot of good coppers, and they're trying to repair the relationship. And if you go to Southern Cross train station, it is wall-to-wall advertising to join Victoria Police.
Yeah, wow.
And it makes you wonder how many good coppers left over what happened with the jab and not what they were forced to do to their fellow citizens.
Yeah.
And I was making the point in my show, it's like, to be fair to the coppers, though, it does look like wicked fun. Do you know what I mean? Like, if I had a paintball gun and I got to walk through the wrecker by during the Perth gun, fucking, is that blue hair? Is now. You know, look.
Mate, you can rag. Now Delby's not here. You can fucking say anything you want. Delby obviously needs the place for.
Yeah, well, look. I mean, those
and
places.
Festivals. Like, for me, it's. And I've got this fucking idea in my head, the same as like Buddha and Whitey and stuff that we're creating this show next week with. You don't need festivals. You don't need all these. They're great, and I understand they're a platform and they help a lot of upcoming comedians to, you know, financially get through some things, and they also host a platform for people to be able to see and expose themselves to new comedians. I get that, but for me, if I want to build something like this, I'm thinking way past that sort of stuff. I'm thinking our own brand. I'm thinking our own shows and our own
100%. And this goes back to what Peter Boghossian was saying: is that don't try and change the institutions. Build your own.
Yeah, fucking own.
And these things are cancelling themselves into irrelevance. And the analogy I use is the taxi industry and Uber.
Yeah.
And it's disruption.
Yeah.
And because they had a monopoly on it for so long, they haven't innovated. They've lost sight of their mission. They are completely disconnected from the reality of mainstream Australia, in the same way that the universities were, and the left-wing thinkers privileged the university over the workplace, and increasingly left-wing thinking became so disconnected from the real lives of everyday Australians, it turns into this gobbledygook. The same things happen in the arts, but there will be a correction, and people like us, mate, are driving it, and it's been a joy to watch, because for the first time I can remember, the good guys are winning in the culture, and to see who sold tickets in Perth, Adelaide and Melbourne compared to who didn't.
Mate, and this is the thing. I love the fact that I've had a podcast through this whole thing. If I really want, I can go back and go, right, what was I thinking? 2019.
It's a time capsule.
2020, 2021, where was my head at? What was going on? And I've got this time capsule that I can go back and go, wow, you've actually held yourself pretty well.
And you can see the evolution or the consistencies, the hypocrisy. And, you know, what's that old saying that journalism is the first draft of history? Well, I think podcasts might be the first draft of history going forward.
100%, mate. And if you want to do yourself a favour, go back and listen to our election special with Cameron McLaren. And what we were talking about, we were watching the election in live action, for example, and to watch it unfold as it was happening, you can hear us talking about all the stats, what's happening, and then overnight it completely changed when they stopped counting. You can hear us going, they've stopped counting. Why have they stopped counting? And it's never happened before. So you can hear us actually seeing it all unfold in real time. Now, 2 or 3 years later, they're going, why the fuck did it stop counting? Why did this place stop counting? Because they had a fucking flood in the area and stuff like that. You can hear us talking about it in real time, and that's kind of cool to have those sorts of ones, for example, as a time capsule in time.
Well, it's like a digital journal of your own thoughts too, and not just your thoughts, but the thoughts of others and some of the prevailing modes of thinking of the culture at the time. So, yeah, mate, you guys should be very pleased with yourselves for what you've built here. And you know, I teased you a little bit at first, I remember, and you know, I'm the first one to put my hand up and go, you know, that was a bit of a shit thing to do, but you know, good on you guys. You've done great things, and you've built a very good following. And you know, like I said, information's the currency of democracy, and we have a currency crisis. And podcasts like this are the new currency of information. And hey, there might be shit currencies. It might be the rupiah, but who knows?
Yeah.
But we can't rely on the existing institutions to provide us with anything in depth and correct. We might get it wrong, but at least we'll admit when we got it wrong. Like, remember when we were the election in the US, the red wave?
Yeah.
didn't materialise.
Didn't happen. Yeah. As we were talking.
And
yeah.
you're going, okay, we got that one wrong.
Yeah.
And as I said to some of the people I disagreed with about the COVID stuff, yes, I will put my hand up and admit that I was wrong. Do you see how fucking easy it is? It's not hard to admit that you're wrong, and it shows a depth of character, and no one's right all the time.
No, exactly. And mate, and that you're not the only person to have said that about the pod, like Ian. It's fucking awesome. Even McCann was talking about it, and when
Poor bastard's episode didn't get recorded.
Mate, it was such a fun episode. As
Oh,
well.
mate,
We'll get him
he's
back
one of
on.
the most interesting minds in Australian comedy. For me, there's probably 6 or 7 minds in the business that I really respect and I disagree with on a great many things. I mean, McCann's a fucking crazy bloody old school Catholic.
Yeah.
Goes to Latin mass and shit. I saw him in Adelaide sitting there with all the old Latin priests, and he's a very eccentric cat, but very smart and very funny.
And leans into the most horrific jokes as well. Like I did not anticipate that from him.
I saw the best sets I've seen of stand up in the last 3 months. James McCann did one at the Fat Cave in Adelaide, and it blew the roof off. And it was just one of those sets that fucking nobody wants to follow it.
Yeah.
And as a comedian, they're the best sets to do. And the second one was Jojo Sutherland, the Scottish, but who's one of us.
One of us.
And she's the funniest woman I've seen, and none of the fucking agencies want to touch her.
Yeah.
I wonder what that's about. Oh, God. So, yeah. Crackers McCann, as I like to call him. Like to see him back on the pod because he's got some very interesting views.
Oh, yeah, he certainly did. And I am devastated that episode didn't get recorded, but we'll get him back on. But, mate, anything you want to plug before we finish up? We actually went for a while without Delby. Another hour.
Oh, it's
him.
nice to not be interrupted by these incessantly shit puns all the time.
Yeah.
I thought I was the title holder for the worst puns in Australian comedy, but fucking Delby's chasing me down.
It is it's a bit more of a slower. There's a better cadence in some ways, but at the same time, when he's here, it does add a bit of flow and jest to it. So
yeah,
he will be back next week after this. But nothing you want to plug?
No, but keep your ear if you're in Sydney or Brisbane or New South Wales, Queensland generally. Keep your ears and eyes peeled because I'm going to be announcing some shows. I'm going to continue the cultural election up the eastern seaboard. I've won a seat in Perth comprehensively. I won a seat in Adelaide comprehensively. And I won a seat in Melbourne comprehensively. So Sydney and Brisbane will fall just the same as the other 3 did. So, we are going to make Australian comedy great again. And we are going to give it back to the people instead of letting these vicious ideologues retain it and sanitize it and ruin it for everyone, because we need comedy now more than ever. I think it was Isaac Asimov that said, in times of prosperity, laughter is a pleasure, and in times of hardship, laughter is a necessity. So I'm going to the business of necessity, which is catharsis and laughter, and in humour there is truth, and in truth there is humour, and I don't want it to sound too fucking romantic about the whole thing, but I am a romantic at heart, and all cynics are romantics at heart.
I love that, mate. That's awesome. And if you do want to see Corey next week, where you're on it, Up and Joke.
Yeah, Up and Joke.
Which I am blurry, so anyone watching at home, sorry. YouTubies, your camera's over there. I can't be bothered going over there. But Corey's on at Up and Joke. It's going to be fucking incredible. It's a loose show, and there's not many tickets left, and what we filmed this morning is pretty silly.
Mate, I'm half expecting you to get charged for what you did this morning.
Well, I think we'll see what happens, but there's tickets. Link is in the bio and in our website and stuff. So get some tickets. I've got nothing to plug except for the show, and then after that I'm going to start doing some more stand-up because I really enjoy the joke writing process.
Well, and it's been a pleasure. You know, one of my favourite things about stand-up is watching the development of people who have started out and the progression, and to see them from when they struggled at the beginning and then to that point where you've got your first good 10 minutes or you've got that great joke and you see the sense of achievement and satisfaction in them, and that's a really beautiful thing, and I enjoy that. And part of what I'm doing with my career in stand-up is going to try and foster the next generation, because we were failed by our elders. I mean, the Will Andersons of the world failed us and the art form terribly, and I won't let the same thing happen to the generation that comes after me. So foster the good people, and you reap what you sow, because you put back in.
100%, and having been on, having Ed Byrne on last week, and such a wealth of knowledge, and it really affirmed some of my thoughts on, like, I'm not good enough at the moment to take on some of the subjects I'd love to tackle. So for him to be talking about that, and then affirm my belief of, like, hey, I'm starting to build some jokes, I'm starting to build confidence on stage, but I'm quite fine with my just set up punch silly at the moment, while I'm just trying to work and learn the craft. And to have someone on with that sort of, well, you know, wealth of experience.
And that's what, I mean, Nick's son said this to me years ago, and I just watched Doug Stanhope, and I was kind of in awe about it. And he goes, mate, it's just experience, right? It's like anything with surfing, you know, the longer you do it, the more comfortable you are, the way you know how to go about it. So there is no substitute for experience, and there are no shortcuts to success in this business, unless you're represented by a token or Century. And the Melbourne Comedy Festival props you up. Oh, this is a beautiful story before I go.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So one of the celebrated establishment acts was on at the gala.
Yeah.
Big
of
deal.
Course. Oh, yeah.
Wanted a spot at the show I was running.
Yeah.
And the bloke I was running it with, Joe, he's like, can you book this person? I was like, mate, this is a fucking no-fly zone for establishment comedians. If you've been on the gala, you don't need this, 100-seater that's sold out to flog your tickets.
Yeah.
They did. I didn't want this person on, but I compromised. And I was like, this person can go on. But the deal is, they've got to go on after me. And I went out and fucking absolutely set fire to it.
Oh.
And this poor comedian had to go on after me and tried to have a crack at me in the opening of the set, and it just fucking failed. And you could just see an ego deflating by the minute as the laughter dried up like the Yangtze River, and it was mwah.
Oh, mate,
so
you'll have to tell me after the pod who that was. That's incredible, mate. You are doing fucking great things. I'm enjoying having you on, and the listeners love it when you're on. So it's always good for our charts when you're on. So you come on as much as you want, mate.
What did Gracker say in Gladiator? So I don't claim to be a man of the people, but I do try and be a man for the people.
Oh, I love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Enjoy, listeners. Take care. Be good to yourselves, and I'll see you next time.
Perfect. Cheers.
Adios.
Hooroo.